What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be going over my Season 6 Wolves build here in Mobalytics. Now, before we get started, I did want to go ahead and update you guys on my Shred build and my Landslide build. So I have officially passed Tier 85 Pit on both of those builds, and I'll go ahead and put some video footage up on the screen for you guys to look at. And I just want to go ahead and mention that none of those builds have any best-in-slot gear pieces or any of their glyphs maxed out. So still a ton of room for improvement. However, I'm more focused on build creation than I am pit pushing right now, but as soon as I'm done with all that, I will focus on min-maxing those builds and push as far in the pit as I possibly can. Also, as always, a link to my builds are down in the description of the video if you are interested. But now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at some gameplay footage of what I've been able to accomplish with my Wolves build for Season 6. So as you guys can see, just like with all of my other builds, all of my glyphs for my Wolves build are not even close to maxed out. Now, unlike in my previous videos, I decided to go with some gear pieces that were a little bit higher tier for my gameplay footage. So on the helmet, we're going to be running an Air of Perdition. I didn't have a shroud at the time, so we're still using Mad Wolf's Glee. We have a pretty decent pair of gloves, but I don't need that extra armor roll. A really good pair of Stormy Companion pants, but ideally I'd like to have a GA in the Pack Leader buff as well. A 2 GA pair of Yen's Blessing. We're rocking a 2 GA axe, but I prefer a staff for pole arm. We got an amulet with GA to willpower. Our ring is missing chance to make enemies vulnerable. And then a GA crit chance Ring of Starless Skies. And then down here in my inventory was the previous helmet I had on, which had a GA to Wolves. So as you guys can see there, even with our build missing plenty of really nice gear pieces, as well as none of our glyphs being maxed out, we are able to easily blow through a lot of the Tormented 4 bosses, and we breeze through a Tier 85 pit without really any issues whatsoever. Now, the Wolves build is actually pretty funny because even though it is one of the best Druid builds this season, it actually highlights a pretty substantial problem with the Druid overall, in that there are a ton of multipliers that include passives as well as legendary nodes that even though your Wolf skill has the tag for, they don't actually get any benefit from. So if you can imagine, if everything was working as it's intended to with the Druid class, the Wolves Companion build would probably be the best Druid build of the season by far. But anyway, that topic is for an entirely different video, so let's go ahead and look at the build. So for our primary skills, we're going to be using Wolves, then we're going to be picking up Shred, mainly just to proc our Pack Leader Spirit boon, as well as give us extra mobility. Then we're going to be running Debilitating Roar for that damage reduction, not just for us, but for our Wolves. Then we're picking up Petrify for our ultimate, grabbing up Blood Howl, mainly just to keep up our buffs, our defensive buffs that we have this season. Then we're also going to be picking up Maul, and again, this is just another thing to keep up our passive buffs. For our Spirit boons, we're going to be running Weariness in the Deer. We're Spirit Bonded into the Eagle. We're picking up Iron Feather for the added health, as well as Avian Wrath for the crit multi. Then on our Wolf, we're going to be running the Pack Leader boon because this is a Companion's build, and you must have the Pack Leader boon to reset your Wolf's active ability, because that is where most of our damage is coming from. And then on the Snake, we're going to be running Masochistic for that extra survivability. Now, as always, there are two variations of this build. However, typically I try not to include any mythic uniques into the base version of the build, but I would highly recommend that if you are going to be running a Wolves build, I would definitely wait until you get a Ring of Starless Skies. There's a significant boost in the quality of life of this build when you have that mythic unique. However, I did go ahead and leave instructions in this little text box. If you do not have one, there's a ring option here for you to run. So that way, if you would prefer, you can run this build early on until you do get that mythic Ring of Starless Skies. Well, let's go ahead and go over the aspects and uniques. So on the helmet, running the Spirit Bond aspect. On the chest piece, running Mad Wolf's Glee. Then on our gloves, we're going to be running the aspect of Stampede. On our pants, it's obviously going to be the Storm's Companion pants. Then for our boots, we are going to be running Yen's Blessing. And I love running Yen's Blessing because they cap out your resistances really easy. And also the passive effect of these boots that cast a skill that's currently on cooldown actually affects your active wolf skill as well. So you can potentially double cast your wolf skill with this build every 8 seconds. Then on our two-hand weapon, we're going to be running the Shepherd's Aspect. On our amulet, we're running the Aspect of the Alpha. Then for our first ring, like I said, it's going to be the Ring of Starless Skies. And then lastly, for our second ring, that is going to be the Moonrage Aspect. Now, we're not going to dive too deep into the mythic version of this setup. However, do remember it is here in the planner. I'll just be going over the specific aspects and uniques that are different for this version. So for the helmet, we're going to be using the Air of Perdition. Then on the chest piece, it's going to be the OP mythic item this season, and that is the Shroud of False Death because of the +1 to all passes that it gives you. So it gives you a ton of damage as well as damage reduction. And then, like I previously stated, we're already going to be running the Ring of Starless Skies. Now onto our gear affixes. For the helmet, we're going to be trying to get a GA2 ranks to wolves, and we're going to be picking up armor and lucky hit chance, as well as the total armor defensive tempering and the utility petrified duration tempering. On our chest piece, our Mad Wolf sleeve, we're going to be trying to get a GA2 max life because that really is the only valuable affix on this chest piece that we have. Then on our gloves, we're going to be running willpower, a GA to crit strike chance, attack speed, and then for the offensive tempering, it's going to be werewolf critical strike chance, and then more petrified duration for our second tempering. For the Storm Companion pants, obviously the GA to ranks to wolves is going to be best in slot. However, if you do get lucky, a GA to ranks to wolves as well as a GA to pack leader spirit boon lucky hit chance is probably the best pair of pants you can find in the season for this build. Down to our Yen's Blessing, I recommend getting a GA to resistance to all elements, but all of your masterwork crits should go to all stats. On our two-hand weapon, which can be a pole arm or a staff for more attack speed, you're going to be looking for a GA to willpower, then you're going to go max life, critical strike damage, then weapon tempering for chance for wolves to deal double damage, and then your offensive tempering should be werewolf critical strike chance. Moving on to our amulet, your best in slot amulet is going to be ranks 2 Envenom, willpower, a GA2 ranks 2 Call of the Wild with all of your masterwork crits going into that, and then a defensive tempering of total armor as well as some critical strike damage. Then onto our Starless Skies, you're going to be looking for a GA to lucky hit chance. However, a GA to critical strike chance or attack speed will be perfectly fine as well. And then for our second ring, we're going to be looking for lucky hit chance to make enemies vulnerable, willpower, a GA to critical strike chance, and then some more werewolf critical strike chance as well as petrify cooldown reduction. Now for the mythic version of this build, all of the affixes are highlighted. However, the big thing I wanted to go ahead and mention here, and it's written down here in this text box, is I have a lot of crit chance highlighted because I want you guys to get 100% crit chance with this build. However, if you do find yourselves well over crit chance cap, go ahead and masterwork more attack speed, lucky hit chance, or willpower. Whichever of those three that you feel like you need the most, temper into that and don't worry about so much crit chance. My goal here is just to get you to that 100%. Anything after that is your choice. And then also optionally down here, if you would prefer, you can change some of these offensive temperings for critical strike damage over to werewolf attack speed. Again, the goal here is just to refresh your wolf's active ability as soon as you cast it, so that way you can spam cast it and burn down enemy packs super fast. Now moving on to our rune words, we're going to be using Tam and Shay on the armor piece, and what this does is allow us to summon spirit wolves, which actually affect our shepherd's aspect, and that in turn boosts up our overall wolf's damage. Then for our second rune word, that's going to be Yul Kree, and this will help us pull mob packs together and really focus our wolves damage to make clearing dungeons that much faster. Then for our gems, we're going to be running sapphires on the gear pieces, and then for our jewelry pieces, we're running 2 skulls and a diamond to reach our res and armor cap. Now for the mythic version of this setup, we will be running all skulls on the jewelry pieces, and that's because we're going to be running the Air of Perdition, and we will be losing that armor affix that we would have on a normal helmet. Onto our skill tree for the basic skills, we're going to be running Maul into Enhanced Maul to build Fortify. Then for our core skills, we're going to be running Shred into Primal Shred, and then we're picking up 1 point Predatory Instinct into 3 points Iron Fur. Then onto our defensive skill tree, we're going to go 1 point Ancestral Fortitude, 3 points Vigilance, and 3 points Backlash, followed up by 1 point Bloodhowl into Preserving Bloodhowl for the attack speed, and then 5 points Debilitating Roar into Innate Debilitating Roar for that extra multiplicative damage. Down to our companion skill tree, going 5 points wolves into ferocious wolves, again to build up fortify easier. They're going to be using 3 points into humanity because you still do swap into human form when you cast your wolves active. We're also going to be picking up 3 points feral aptitude, 3 points call of the wild, and then 1 point ravens into brutal ravens so we can get those 2 additional ravens to buff up our shepherd's aspect. Down to our wrath skill tree, we're going 1 point neurotoxin, 1 point toxic claws, and 3 points in venom. Then onto our ultimate skill tree, going 5 points Petrify into Supreme Petrify. Then we're going 3 points Catastrophe, 3 points Defensive Posture, and then 3 points Quick Shift, 3 points Heightened Senses, and again, 1 point Natural Fortitude. This is just a preference. You can move this point wherever you want it. I just like it to help keep up Fortify a little bit easier. And then for our key passive, we're going to be running One with Nature, the brand new key passive for companions for Season 6. Now moving on to the Paragon board, as always, I have written down here in the text box what I prioritize first as I'm acquiring Paragon points. So if you have any questions, look at this first, and then if you still have anything that you need to ask, go ahead and post it down in the comments section of this video, and I will answer it as soon as I see it. But going over our Paragon boards, for our first board, we're going to be running the Headhunter glyph. Moving on to the second board, that's going to be the Untamed board, and we're slotting in Keeper here, and that's because they have 2 really nice rare nodes that give us companion skill damage, and that Keeper glyph will help jack the damage up on those 2 rare nodes, as well as give us that nice multiplier to non-physical damage with ourselves, as well as our companions. Then moving on to our third board, that's going to be Ancestral Guidance. We are going to be picking up the Legendary node because we are going to be proccing that with Shred. And then we are going to be slotting in the Wilds glyph here. Moving on to our fourth board, that's going to be Height and Malice, and we're going to be picking up the Height and Malice Legendary node, as well as slotting in Spirit here because it has a ton of Dexterity nodes we can pick up. And then last but not least is going to be the Inner Beast board with the glyph Shapeshifter, and we are going to be picking up the Legendary node just to help with our resource cost reduction while we're casting Shred. And the reason why I like Shapeshifter is because it gives you another crit damage multiplier, and it also gives you a little bit more added damage and willpower by buffing up your rare nodes nearby. Then last but not least, for our Mercenaries, like I always say, guys, you guys can pick whatever mercenary you prefer. I personally like Subo on most of my builds, and that's because of this cover fire ability that applies a crit damage multiplier for us. And then for our Reinforcement Mercenary for this build, I like right here, as well as the Bastion ability that he has. And that's because you're typically fighting up close and personal at all times with this build. And when he drops this AoE circle and you're standing inside of it, you basically become invulnerable for the duration. And it helps with clearing out really tough mob packs and not having to rely solely on Debilitating Roar and Bloodhowl for your defensive capabilities. But anyways, guys, that's my Wolves build here for Season 6. It's been a ton of fun playing this build, and I'm super happy. It is one of the best builds for Druid this season. Now, my next build coming up is going to be the Boulder Cane Bear build I make every single season, and I am super happy that that build is incredibly strong this season because it is a ton of fun to play, and it's definitely much more interesting than just playing a plain old Hurricane build. Now, don't forget, all of my builds are linked down below in the description of this video, and I will continue to update you guys on my pit pushing progress as I progress through the season. Say that 10 times fast. And if you have any questions whatsoever, go ahead and post them down in the comment section, and I will answer them as soon as I see them. But as always, guys, I hope you're having a great day or a great night, depending on wherever you're from, and peace out, guys. I will see you in the next one.